They don't come back with love. They come back with strategy. And if you're not ready for it, you'll think you're crazy for doubting them. Again, because when you finally stand up, when you finally say no more, the narcissist doesn't disappear. They don't just vanish into the night like villains in fairy tales. They linger. They adapt. They find cracks in your resolve and try to slip back in like a fog, quiet, soft, and suffocating. And maybe you've been there. You tell yourself you're done. You've cried all the tears. You've blocked the number. You've told your friends. But then, the text comes. The soft apology. The just wondering how you're doing. The old inside joke. Or worse, the full-blown transformation. Suddenly they're self-aware. They're healing. They've changed. They say they've been reading up on narcissism and they realize now how much they hurt you. And a part of you wants to believe it, not because you're foolish, but because you remember the version of them you were once willing to lose yourself for. This is where the real danger lies, not in the storm, but in the eye of it. When everything seems calm again, just before the chaos returns. See, narcissists don't return because they love you. They return because losing control of you feels like death to them. They return because you saw behind the mask, and that is the one thing their ego cannot survive. And so, they don't knock. They slither. Through guilt, through nostalgia, through fabricated vulnerability. They don't say, "Let me back in." They whisper, "You were wrong about me," and if you're not grounded in your truth, you'll start to believe them. This video is for the part of you that's still wondering if it was really that bad. For the part of you that feels guilty for having boundaries. For the part of you that's tired of blaming yourself. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining things. You're not hard to love. And if you've ever asked yourself, why do they always come back? The real question is, why do they think they still can? We're going to go deep today. Not just into the behaviors, but into the emotional games that narcissists play when their mask falls off and you stop playing along. You'll start to recognize every little move for what it is: not love, not change, but manipulation, dressed up as regret. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to watch for, and more importantly, how to stand firm when the pressure to open your door creeps back in. If you've ever felt alone in this, you're not. This space is for you. Take a breath. We're not rushing this, and if you've been needing this kind of clarity, this kind of raw truth that doesn't gaslight your pain, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and stay close. We're not just talking about narcissists. We're talking about reclaiming your peace. They start with silence, not the kind that brings peace. The kind that stirs anxiety, that makes you question if you were too harsh, too cold, too final. It's intentional. It's the withdrawal of presence as a weapon. After you expose them, after you finally gather the strength to name what they did, to stop dancing around the damage, they retreat. But not because they're reflecting. They retreat to plan. This is the first way they try to crawl back in, through the illusion of absence. You see, narcissists count on your emotional memory. They know your body still remembers the highs, not just the lows. They know the silence will echo so loud in your mind, you'll start filling in the blanks yourself. Maybe they're hurt. Maybe they're really gone this time. Maybe you were too harsh. Maybe. They let time do the talking, because they know time can soften truth if you're not anchored in it. While you're replaying what you said and wondering if you went too far, they're watching, waiting, measuring when the guilt will start to seep in. But the silence is not sorrow, it's strategy. It's not "I miss you," it's "How long until you miss me?" And then, just as you're adjusting to the quiet, just as your world starts to stabilize, they break it. A text, a memory, a song sent your way. Sometimes it's just a heart emoji, innocent enough to deny intent, loaded enough to disrupt your healing. Because this is the second way they try to come back. Nostalgia, weaponized. They'll bring up something specific, something only the two of you shared. Remember that night in the rain? Funny, I passed by that coffee shop we used to sit in. Or worse, I just heard that song you loved. It made me think of you. It's never random. It's surgical. They don't want you to remember who they were. They want you to remember who you were with them. The version of you that bent to keep peace. The one who forgave before an apology. The one who thought love meant holding on, no matter how much it hurt. They want you back in that version of yourself, not the one who exposed them. Because make no mistake, being exposed is a narcissist's worst nightmare. It's not the breakup that cuts them. It's the loss of control. And now they're scrambling, rewriting the story, casting themselves as the misunderstood one, the wounded soul, the person going through a lot. That's where the third move comes in. Fabricated vulnerability. Suddenly, they're open. Suddenly, they have insight. Suddenly, they've read books, gone to therapy, faced their demons. Suddenly, they're the one who's healing, but it's all timed, all choreographed. Because what they're really doing is testing if your empathy still outruns your memory. They know your heart. They know how it stretches for people who cry. And they'll cry. They'll confess. They'll tell you they were scared, damaged, confused. They won't take full accountability, though. That would require ego death. They'll take just enough to sound believable, just enough to make you think, maybe they're finally waking up. But here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They're not sorry they hurt you. They're sorry you saw them clearly. And so they perform sorrow. Because if you believe they've changed, then maybe, just maybe, you'll question your decision to walk away. Breathe. Let that land. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about hate. It's about reclaiming your ability to recognize the difference between truth and performance. And this is just the beginning. Then comes the shift, the fourth move. Subtle, slippery, dangerous. They stop apologizing and start questioning you. Not in an aggressive way, not at first. It starts with little probes, barely noticeable if you're not paying attention. Are you sure you're remembering things right? Was it really that bad? I just don't understand how you could think I would ever try to hurt you. It's gentle gaslighting. Whispered, not shouted. Laced with confusion, not accusation. They plant doubt in your soil, hoping it will bloom into self-blame. Because they know once you start questioning your memory, you're one step away from questioning your truth. This tactic isn't random, it's a reshaping of the narrative. Because here's what most people never understand. Narcissists don't just lie to you. They lie for you. They craft stories you'll want to believe. They make themselves the hero of their pain and you the villain of your boundaries. They'll say things like, "You never gave me a chance to grow. You abandoned me when I needed you most. I opened up to you more than I ever have with anyone, and you just left." And if your heart is still holding guilt in its corners, you'll feel it. A pang, a question, a temptation to explain yourself. You'll want to correct the record, defend your reasons, prove that you were kind even in your goodbye. But don't fall for it. That's the trap. They want you back in the ring, arguing, because arguing means connection. And any connection, even painful, is better to them than being irrelevant. But then, just when you're standing your ground, just when you're not taking the bait, they switch again. Now comes the fifth attempt. Third-party validation. They'll show up on social media as the reformed one. Suddenly, they're glowing. They're wise. They're posting quotes about taking accountability and healing their inner child. They might even be with someone new fast, too fast. And that new person, they're everything you begged the narcissist to be. Affectionate, grateful, public. It's a show, and it's not for them. It's for you. They want you to see what you lost. They want you to question whether you were too demanding, too reactive, too cold. They want to hurt you with a smile. But here's the secret they can't hide. No matter how many quotes they post or how many soulmates they cycle through, they didn't change. They shifted masks. And even now, behind closed doors, someone else is already starting to feel the pressure of perfection. Someone else is starting to walk on eggshells. Someone else is starting to shrink to fit a fantasy that was never real. Don't envy the next person. Pray for them, because the narcissist isn't looking for love. They're looking for reflection. Someone who mirrors back what they want to see. And the moment that reflection cracks, it begins all over again. But when you expose them, you don't just walk away. You break the mirror, and nothing terrifies them more. So they circle back with their last resort. The sixth and final attempt. Desperation masked as love. They come with grand gestures now. Maybe it's an unannounced visit. Maybe it's a long email, a handwritten letter. Maybe they show up at your job, at your door, saying they couldn't let this go. They use words like fate, destiny, soul connection. They'll say, "I realized you're the one." They'll say, "I can't live without you." They'll say, "I'll do whatever it takes." But don't mistake intensity for intimacy. This isn't love. This is panic. This is what happens when control slips through their fingers and they realize they can't rewrite the story anymore. You're not who you were. You don't respond the same. You're not cracking under guilt. You're not swayed by performance. You're steady. And here's the thing, they can feel it. They know when their power is gone. They know when the cycle is broken. And when all else fails, they throw the final Hail Mary. "If you don't take me back, I'll fall apart." But your healing is not their collapse. Your boundary is not their destruction. Your truth is not their cage. It's your freedom. Take that in. You gave them chances. You gave them grace, silence, softness, patience. You stayed when your heart whispered, "This doesn't feel right." You explained your pain in a language they pretended not to understand. You waited for change. and you waited alone. So when they try to return, when they spin their words and reach for you with trembling hands and misty eyes, you are not cruel for not opening the door. You are not heartless for choosing peace over potential. You are not broken for not buying what they're suddenly desperate to sell. Because deep down, you already know. This is not love coming back. This is the wound calling your name. It wants you to reopen the cut. It wants you to stop the bleeding with the very thing that caused it. But you're wiser now. That first time you exposed them, maybe you didn't even mean to. Maybe it slipped out, maybe your voice cracked as you finally named what they were doing. Maybe you trembled afterward, scared you'd gone too far, scared of their reaction. Because that's how they trained you. To be more afraid of their anger than your own pain. To make your hurt small enough that it wouldn't scare them away. But something shifted. Something broke in a good way. You didn't just call them out, you saw them. And once you see someone clearly, you can't unsee it. They weren't a mystery anymore. They were a pattern that you could finally step out of. And that is what they're trying to undo. Not the loss of you, but the loss of power. They didn't love you, they loved the access. To your heart, to your forgiveness, to your silence. But that version of you is gone now. Not bitter, not jaded, just awake. And being awake doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. It means you stop explaining why you're bleeding when someone keeps cutting you. So when they come back, and they always do, you won't need to shout. You won't need to prove they were toxic. You won't need to convince anyone of your story. Because the healing will be in your stillness, your disinterest, your lack of response. And nothing confuses a narcissist more than a person who no longer needs to defend themselves. Nothing shatters their illusion like your peace. Not anger, not revenge. Just peace. You see, they expect you to rage. They expect you to crumble. They expect you to need them, even in your fury. But when you meet their chaos with calm, when you don't chase, don't correct, don't explain, you're speaking a language they've never understood. Self-respect. So when the texts come, when they show up in your dreams, in your inbox, in your mentions, when they try one more time to convince you that this time they mean it, you'll pause, you'll breathe, you'll remember. You didn't lose them, you released them. And in doing so, you found someone far more important, yourself. There's something sacred about walking away quietly, not with fireworks, not with dramatic goodbyes, but with steady steps, no longer waiting to be seen, heard, or fixed. When you expose a narcissist, you're not just calling out their behavior, you're making a silent declaration. I choose myself now, and that more than anything is what they can't stand, because they've built their entire presence on your disorientation, on your need to understand, on your ache for clarity that never came. Every time they twisted your words, made you second-guess yourself, or responded to your pain with cold indifference, they weren't confused. They were in control. But now, the game is over. You stopped playing. You stopped reaching. You stopped needing them to validate the very wounds they created. And in that silence, something incredible happens. You start to hear yourself again, the you who doesn't explain your worth, the you who doesn't negotiate with chaos, the you who doesn't confuse pain for passion, the you who remembers what it feels like to breathe without shrinking. Because here's the quiet truth. Narcissists don't crawl back because they love you. They crawl back because your peace exposes their emptiness, because your stillness is louder than their performance. They are not fueled by connection. They are fueled by access. And when you lock the door, not with spite, but with finality, they feel it. Not your absence, but their own void. You are not their home. You were their hiding place. And now, without you, they're left alone with the one person they've always been trying to escape. Themselves. That's why they spiral. That's why they post and perform and pretend. Because they need the world to believe a story they can no longer force you to live in. You saw through it. And that kind of seeing, it's irreversible. You don't unlearn your own awakening. It's not about hate. It's not about revenge. It's about freedom. Real freedom doesn't always come with cheers or closure. Sometimes, it comes quietly on a Tuesday morning when you ignore the message. On a Saturday night when you feel the ache but still don't call back. On an ordinary day when you catch yourself smiling and realize, I didn't think about them once today. That's freedom. Not loud, not flashy, but yours. So no matter how they try to return, with silence, with nostalgia, with tears, with guilt, with new masks, with dramatic last chances, you stay still, you stay sovereign, you stay sacred, because you've already returned to something far more powerful than anything they could offer you. You've returned to your truth. And this time, you're not giving it up for anyone. You'll still have days when it stings, not because you want them back, not because you miss the chaos, but because there's grief in realizing how much of yourself you gave to someone who only mirrored it back when it served them. There's grief in recognizing how much of your love was spent trying to rescue someone who was never drowning, just watching you struggle in the deep end. arms crossed. You'll have flashbacks, a song, a scent, a stupid inside joke. Something that used to feel sweet will now feel sour, because you remember what you didn't know back then. You remember the version of you who still believed, still hoped, still thought love could fix what someone else refused to admit was broken. And on those days, don't shame yourself for feeling. Grief doesn't mean you want them back. It means you're healing. It means something real happened, even if it was one-sided. It means your heart worked overtime to love someone who couldn't love you back, because they don't even love themselves. And you still chose love, even in confusion, even in pain, even when they handed it back to you fractured and cold. That's not weakness. That's power, because it means your love was real, and now it gets to return to you. See, the truth is, narcissists are always haunted by those who saw them clearly and left anyway. It doesn't matter how loud they get, how fast they move on, how many people they try to replace you with. You were the moment they were exposed. You were the mirror they couldn't manipulate. You were the soft place that turned solid. And that story? That can't be rewritten. No smear campaign can erase the one person who saw behind the curtain and had the strength to walk away without slamming the door, without needing them to understand, without begging to be believed. That's what they'll never admit. They know what they lost, not because you were perfect, but because you were real, and real is what they've spent their entire life avoiding. So when they crawl back because they will, it's not because they've changed. It's because they can't recreate the part of you that made them feel whole. But that wasn't your job. It never was. You are not a mirror. You are not a fix. You are not a fantasy. You are a person with a heart, a voice, a truth, a sacred right to peace. You didn't expose them to hurt them. You exposed them because your soul was done being silenced. You spoke what your younger self never got to say. You did what your mother might never have done. You broke a cycle that was never yours to carry. And you didn't need revenge. You needed relief. And now that you have it, you don't need closure. You are the closure. Maybe no one clapped when you walked away. Maybe people said you were dramatic. Maybe some even sided with them because narcissists are experts at building masks that look like empathy. But deep down you knew. You felt it in your body. The way your shoulders dropped the moment you cut the cord. The way your chest opened when you stopped waiting for the apology. The way your nights got quieter, softer, safer. That's the kind of peace they can't manufacture. That's what scares them, because it means you're building a life that doesn't include their chaos as the centerpiece. And narcissists don't come back for love. They come back for relevance. They can't stand not being the main character in your story. And so they'll try to edit the script one text, one call, one perfectly timed, I've changed moment at a time. But you're not reading from that script anymore. You're not playing the same role. You've outgrown the part of you that needed to be chosen by someone who could never see you. Let that sink in, because there's power in that. There's healing in not needing closure from a person who never gave you clarity. There's grace in walking away with your dignity, even when they tried to strip it from you. And if you're sitting here wondering why it still hurts, even after all the manipulation, please hear this. Pain is not proof that you should go back. It's proof that you're human. It's proof that you showed up with your whole heart. It's proof that your love was deep enough to leave an echo, but echoes farther. And so does the spell they had over you. There will come a day soon when they cross your mind, and it doesn't burn. When you see their name and your stomach doesn't flip. When you hear their voice in memory or message and you feel nothing, not hatred, not longing, just neutrality. And that day will be your liberation. Because the truth is, narcissists don't crawl back because they realize your worth. They crawled back because they always knew it. They just hoped you wouldn't figure it out. But now you have. And there's no going back. You don't need their regret. You don't need their confession. You don't need one last talk. You don't need anything from the person who needed to dim your light just to feel seen, because you're done trying to earn the love you were always worthy of. You're not waiting for them to grow. You're not holding your breath for them to change. You're not pressing rewind on a story that nearly broke you. You're moving forward with your truth intact, your heart healing, and your power no longer up for negotiation. And that's something no narcissist can ever take from you again. Thank you for staying, for listening, for honoring your own story. If you've made it this far, you're not just healing from someone who mistreated you. You're healing from everything inside you that told you to stay longer than you should have. The voice that said, maybe it's not that bad. The ache that whispered, you can fix this if you just try harder. The fear that made you believe love meant sacrificing yourself. You didn't fail because you loved someone who couldn't love you back. You were trained to tolerate what you didn't deserve, trained by early wounds, by emotional starvation disguised as loyalty, by a world that teaches women and emotionally sensitive men to carry the weight of relationships on their backs and call it devotion. But now, you're unlearning. You're no longer confusing cows for passion. You're no longer calling manipulation misunderstanding. You're no longer softening your truth just to keep someone comfortable in their own dysfunction. And as that truth settles, as it roots itself in you, something sacred begins to rise. Discernment, clarity, self-trust. You'll start to notice how calm feels better than chemistry, how peace feels more alive than drama ever did. You'll crave the kind of love that doesn't require pain to prove it's real. And one day, you'll be with someone, or maybe just alone, but whole, and you'll look back and think, that wasn't love. That was survival disguised as connection. And you'll honor the version of you that didn't know the difference, because they were doing their best with what they had. You're not broken. You're not bitter. You're just finally done bleeding for people who only show up to watch you ache. And if they come back because they always try this time, you'll smile. Not because you're tempted, but because you know they only return to the place where they were once fed. And you've closed the kitchen. You're not a home for chaos anymore. You are a sanctuary for peace. You've earned your way back to yourself. That's the real love story. Not about who comes crawling back, but about how you rise, alone, unshaken, soft, but never again silent. So if this spoke to you, if you felt seen in these words, take a moment, not to relive the past, but to thank yourself for surviving, for choosing truth over fantasy, for not answering when they knocked again. This space is for you. And if you want more of it, real talk, raw truths, and the kind of content that doesn't gaslight your pain, go ahead and subscribe. Like the video, share it with someone still finding their way out. You never know whose strength you might awaken. Your story doesn't end with what they did. It begins with what you choose now. And I hope you choose you.